Hello and welcome back for another video of China in the Global South project. My name is Christian Jeroneima. I'm the Francophone editor of the China Global South, and I'm happy to be back again. I know I've been away for quite some time. I think it's been 3 or 4 weeks I've been away. I was on vacation and I was also working on different projects on the China Global South. For those who've been connected, you've seen me, you've heard me at least on the podcast that we've had on different issues. And one of them was this podcast here about China's reaction to the coup in Niger. It was our most popular show that we've posted on this channel. We had many questions and many comments and people really raising up different issues. And maybe I'm going to make a video on that and answering the question that people rose about the coup in Niger and how China addressed that coup in Niger. But the thing that really kept me busy lately was a project that I've been working on for the last 6, 7 months about the cobalt and copper industry in the DRC. So how it's connected with China, what are the players, what are the stakeholders and everything. So we finally finished a project and we've put it online. For those who've been subscribing to our content in our newsletter in English and our newsletter in French, we've been advertising about that. So yes, we've released finally our first Cobalt map of DRC. Basically, in that Cobalt map, you're going to find main information about who are the main stakeholders in the cobalt industry in DRC, how much they're producing, what is the scale of Chinese company comparing to other companies, who producing more? Is it Glencore project or Chinese project, or is it a Kazakh project? You're gonna find some surprising information in that tool, where you see Kazakh company producing a bit more than Chinese company when it comes to cobalt. You're gonna see the entanglements, the connection between Chinese companies and Western buyers, and sending copper and cobalt in Switzerland or elsewhere, or in South Korea. But anyway, all those information are available in the DRC Cobalt interactive map that we've built. That's available in our French website, projectfriction.com/cobalt, and also in our English website, chinaglobalsouth.com/cobalt. I'm going to put the link down below in the description so you can find information about that, about the tool. I'm going to make a tutorial video explaining how to use the tool and what information you can find, what are missing, and what are going to be improved along the way. So just be patient and be connected. You're going to see that tutorial video that's going to allow you to kind of know how to navigate the tool. But even without that, the tool is quite user-friendly, straightforward, easy to understand, and easy to use. So that's all for the announcement. I'm here for the big news of the week. For those who've been following the news, you know that this week was the BRICS summit in Johannesburg in South Africa, where the 5 member countries of the BRICS gathered together. All the 5 head of state, except Vladimir Putin, would join through video feed. They were gathering in South Africa to talk about different issues that have been raised along the last few years, and that last year. One of the big issue was about the currency. Was going to have a BRICS currency or not? They did not mention them. They did not mention that so far. The moment I'm recording this video, the BRICS currency did not come up. One about currency, we do know that the BRICS banks, the NDB, is not going to add up new members. The CFO, the BRICS member, released a statement about that. But in terms of expansion, BRICS, yes, it's expanding. That was the second and maybe the most interesting topic on the agenda of the BRICS. Questions were asked: are BRICS going to enlarge? If yes, by how much? How many countries are we going to see joining the BRICS? Now we have the answer. 6 new countries are going to become full members of the BRICS by January 2024. Who are those countries? We're going to have Argentina in Latin America, Egypt and Ethiopia in Africa, and in the Middle East, we're going to have Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Iran. In total, 6 new members are joining the BRICS. So by January 2024, BRICS are going from 5 members to 11 members. This is a huge expansion. First question people have been asking, so basic one, very much basic one. What BRICS is going to be called? Are we going to see a new name of the BRICS? Are going to move from BRICS to BRICA? I don't know, something. But for us in the Global South, when we wrote about that, we called it BRICS Plus. That's what the name we've given to that BRICS expanded. We've wrote so many analyses about that. I've wrote one in French, really about the risky expansion of the BRICS. In French, you're gonna find it. We haven't translated it in English, so but those who can speak French can read it. The title is Du BRICS au BRICS Plus, un élargissement risqué. Which translates from BRICS to BRICS Plus, a risky expansion. In that analysis, I'm raising some questions to really pay careful attention to for BRICS now that BRICS is expanding, that BRICS wanted to expand it because it was written 2 days before we had a decision about whether or not BRICS is going to be expanded. So, but one of the main issues that we're going to have to really clarify that now we know that BRICS is expanding is just quite simple, is to know what BRICS is. Because let's face it, we're going to have to, we still have 13 years later after its inception in 2009, we still have to determine really what BRICS is. Is BRICS a military alliance? Is it BRICS? Is it an economic and trading alliance? Is it a political alliance? Or what is it exactly? Or is it an alternative to the current international community? But being an alternative to the current international community comes with different other consequences. But yes, anyway, those are the questions that the BRICS is going to have to answer in terms of identity. Who are we? What do we do? What's our mechanism of functioning? What's our goals into the future? So this is main important question, because the answer to that question is going to determine down the line how many new members would like to join the BRICS and what going to be the criteria. And even for those who join right now, we still have to wait on the criteria they've decided upon on how to determine who's going to join or not. We're going to have to wait to get a clear understanding on how it did happen. So second question that comes to my mind, who's winning, who's losing in that expansion? Obviously, when you look at the names, when you look at the map, you can see, yes, China is the biggest winner in this expansion. Two of its main economic partners in Africa, Egypt and Ethiopia, join. China has been pouring billions of dollars lately in Egypt, where we see private Chinese company and state-owned companies bring almost $13-14 billion in Egypt in terms of investment. In Ethiopia, in the last 15 years, we've seen Chinese manufacturing company opening up in Ethiopia. Yes, China is expanding its clout in Africa. When you look at the Middle East, I'm not going to talk about UAE, where Dubai is. I'm just going to focus about Iran and Saudi Arabia. You remember a few months back, I made a video here about the role that China has played by becoming a peacemaker between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Now that the both of them have been allowed to join BRICS, two things to pay attention to: the dynamic in the Middle East. And for the dynamic in the Middle East, we're going to have to pay attention to Israel reaction now that Saudi Arabia and Iran both are there in the group. How Israel is going to react to that, how Israel is going to perceive that new alliance, and how Israel is going to react to the perception it has about the BRICS. And that takes me to my first question. The BRICS are going to have to really determine who they are to allow people, to allow different countries to know how to interact and how to perceive them. We don't want to find ourselves in a situation where we have a de facto cold war because of the perception that other countries or other blocs have or had or will have about the BRICS as it is expanding now. The second point to look at about the Middle East is going to be the United States, of course, seeing Saudi Arabia joining the BRICS and seeing Russia in the background. It's going to kind of raise some bells in DC when they see Iran, China, Russia in the same group. They might have the feeling that we're having here a anti-West alliance forming. So all those dynamics are going to be really, we're going to have to really pay attention to that. And third point is going to be having those two countries together, of course, is going to allow China to further its agenda and to strengthen even its initiative of peace building between Saudi Arabia and Iran. And if China succeed, we can expect China clout really to grow bigger and further in the Middle East. So this is the three things we're going to have to really pay attention on how this expansion of BRICS is going to play out in the Middle East. And when you move to Southeast Asia, this is where the big surprise is. We don't have a Southeast Asia member joining the BRICS. We know that Indonesia was interested into joining the BRICS. The president of Indonesia was in Johannesburg as a part of his Africa tour, is also in Johannesburg, but maybe he was expecting Indonesia to join. For those who don't know, Indonesia is one of China's major partner in the region. We have massive Chinese company investing in bauxite, in nickel, and building processing plant in Indonesia. So I was in the China Global South, we were kind of expecting to see Southeast Asia, Indonesia specifically, to join the group, but it was not allowed to join the group. So we go to Latin America, Argentina, of course, joining the group. Yes, another big China, another big China ally into the region, economically speaking, of course. So yeah, we have really China in terms of winner. China is the biggest winner. And the second winner will be Russia, of course. The BRICS expanding means that, Russia is much more friendly countries around in that formal setting. We know that the war in Russia kind of isolated Moscow. So BRICS expansion, of course, brings much more people and, creates much more interaction, which is good for Russia to feel less isolated on the international stage. So, which makes Russia the second winners of that expansion of the BRICS. So who's losing then? So my bet is country like South Africa. South Africa could say, when as long as it was the only African country to the BRICS to say I'm African, spokesperson, I'm carrying Africa voice into the BRICS, and we even saw to extend President Ramaphosa invited African head of state during the BRICS outreach, where many of them really gave interesting speech. I think about Hakainde Hichilema, who had a really interesting comment about what BRICS should be and what BRICS should bring for Africa in terms of advantage. Even President Nana Akufo-Addo in Ghana, of Ghana, made similar comments about the BRICS. We could see the expectation that Africa has toward the BRICS. So now that we have two new countries, Egypt, even though Egypt is kind of Africa, not Africa, but it's Africa, it's Africa country, and we also have Ethiopia. Let's see how much political clout South Africa will be able to maintain within the BRICS or outside the BRICS. And here, I'm just talking from a geopolitical standpoint, assuming that a country like South Africa would want to keep the leadership. But if it's not the case, maybe they do have a different strategy, a different approach, and different goals on how and what the role they would like to play into the BRICS. So they might not be disturbed by seeing new African country joining the BRICS. Let's see how it's going to unfold. So those were my quick comments. Really, in French, we say commentaire à chaud to that announcement of BRICS expansion. We're going to have really to see, we're going to have to wait for much more detail, especially in terms of the criteria, if ever they release those criteria, how those countries were chosen, and that's going to allow us to see how BRICS is going to move forward. And in one of the questions I've also raised in my pieces about that was the fact that I'm going to be really curious to see the functioning of the BRICS now that BRICS has expanded. I'm really going to see, are we going to see the kind of configuration where you have the founding countries, the 4 founding countries? South Africa isn't the founding countries because it's been there for so long that we have the feeling that it's been a founding countries now. It's not. So are we going to see the kind of setting where the 4 founding countries are maintaining a certain privilege? Or are we going to see just an open flow where all the countries have the same weight? I know for a country like China, no matter the setting, no matter the mechanism they put in place, because of its political, economic, and financial military might, it's still going to have influence over different countries. And no matter the structure, China's going to be fine with it. So let's see how BRICS is going to change and how it's going to expand. By 2024, we move from 5 to 11. What's going to be the challenge of the future? What's going to be the challenge for BRICS? It takes me back to the first question I was asking at the beginning, BRICS identity. When you hear the comment, when you listen to speeches made by different head of states from Africa, for elsewhere in the world, from the global south, you could see that many people are really carrying the hope of BRICS being an alternative from the international, the Western-led international community. Many have been having grievances about how business have been led by the international community, how the United States have been using the US dollar to impose economic sanctions on different countries, how the United States have been influencing the economy of different countries. When you know that when they change the monetary policy in the US, how does it impact the financial institutions and how they've been using different financial institutions, the World Bank, the IMF, to either impose sanction or to pressure different countries based on different policy they've put in place. All those grievances are legitimate, and I think those are the grievances that my colleagues in China Global South here, Eric Olander and Cobalt Van Staden, have been raising about the motivation behind the huge numbers of countries who wanted to join BRICS. Before the summit, we had 40 countries expressing really strong interest in joining BRICS. We had, I think, 20-something who really who went in to formally bid to join the BRICS. We cannot just downplay that number. 40 countries expressing interest of joining a group that's still in the quest of its own identity, but that gives the perception of being something different is not nothing. It's something to really pay careful attention to. We cannot just say, it's BRICS. And I think that people in DC should start to really pay attention. And for the BRICS country, my advice to you guys is to be really strengthen the core, determine your identity. We need to know who you are. We need to know, for countries like other countries in Africa, and countries like Nigeria or DRC, who later on might express the interest and the willingness to join, they need to know what they're joining. Because many of them in the global south have already said, we are not going to find ourselves in the midst of a new geopolitical war, a new Cold War between China, between the East and the West. So once they join the BRICS, they need to know what they're joining, why they're joining. I say that because yesterday when President Xi was talking about the BRICS, he mentioned about that the BRICS should be that place where country members are supporting each other core interests. And we do know sometimes how China core interests are in conflict with the United States, for instance. So we're going to have to be clear about what the BRICS is and what's the future for the BRICS. So those are the questions I'm going to leave with you. If you have any question, comments, tell me, what do you think about this BRICS Plus? Tell me, what do you think, what's going to happen next? What should be the next move? Should the BRICS keeps on expanding, or should they strengthen the core and the identity and the mechanism so we know who they are and where they're going and what's really going to happen? And drop your question, drop your comments. And I hope by next week, I'm going to make a much deeper video going into different aspects of different countries, what they gain, what they lose, what's happening, what's going to change for the BRICS, and what may happen. So I may address the question in the comments you're going to give us. So 2 things before I go. First reminder, there is a new tool of Cobalt in the DRC connection with China. You're going to find the links down in the show notes. That it's available in French and in English. You're going to find everything that you need to find about the cobalt industry in the DRC. It's very fascinating work that we have done. And I'm really grateful to the team that really accompanied me to build that tool. Last thing, if it's your first time on this channel and you really liked and loved what you saw, the comments and everything, click subscribe. and the bell so you can be notified every time we drop a new video or a new podcast where we talk about different issues. Friday today, a new podcast has been released where we talked about the BRICS expansion with a guest, and it was really interesting. So just that's it. Click the bell, so you're gonna be notified. And for those who left comments about the China reaction to Niger coups, I might, maybe, I'm not sure yet. Maybe I'm gonna do a response video explaining and addressing some questions that people have raised about that. So that was all for me, and I was happy to have you back with me. My name is Christian Giraud, Francophone editor of the China Global South Project, and I'm gonna see you next week for another video of China in the Global South.